Matthew Elliott is someone you used to work with, yes?
Yes.
He is now saying you are a fantasist who is 100% lying. Are you a liar?
It doesn't matter what Matthew Elliott has to say. All everyone needs to do is just look at the evidence. This is about evidence. This is about Matthew Elliott's opinion versus evidence and three binders of evidence.
Are you motivated by a desire for a second referendum?
No, I'm motivated by democracy, by protecting democracy.
Are you still a Brexiteer?
Yes.
You still favour Britain leaving the European Union?
Yes, most definitely, but not based on cheating, not based on a campaign that broke electoral law.
Can we then unpick what it was you went to the Electoral Commission with?
Yep.
What is your key allegation of Vote Leave controlling the money that was being sent by this smaller group, Believe, to a company in Canada?
So, according to electoral law, you cannot coordinate between two different campaign groups, and you have spending limits. Spending limits keep elections and campaigns and referendums fair. Vote Leave used Believe as a way to overspend, and they lied by saying that there was no coordination. But as Secretary, Treasurer, and Research Director of Believe, there was coordination. It was a coordinated campaign. There is evidence that shows that Believe was created by Vote Leave. There are emails that show that Vote Leave was coming up with the mission statement of Believe. The Believe Drive was based in the Vote Leave home Google Drive. So there's more than enough evidence of there being a coordinated campaign, and that is against electoral law.
Chris Wylie, what was your involvement here? What was your evidence to the Electoral Commission on this allegation?
Sure. So my involvement in this started with conversations with AIQ, which is the company that received 40% of Vote Leave spending. So it was a major player in the referendum. When they revealed to me the scheme that Vote Leave had set up, where they used Believe as a funding vehicle to overspend, when I heard that, that was deeply concerning. Particularly given that this is a permanent and irrevocable change to the constitutional settlement of this country. And so I went and I asked Shahmir, is this true? Did this happen? He showed me more evidence of coordination, which is against the law. With the evidence that Shahmir has provided and the additional evidence that I provided in emails, text messages with AIQ, and also with Stephen Parkinson, who's the special advisor to the Prime Minister, who is also telling me about the scheme, we presented that to the Electoral Commission, and now apparently the Electoral Commission agrees that, yes, Vote Leave broke the law. Now,
Vote Leave have revealed that this is what the Electoral Commission draft report says. Can you confirm this? Have you seen a draft report?
No, because the Electoral Commission, as a matter of course, does not actually provide reports in advance unless you are the person who is guilty of that offense. So we haven't yet seen, nor has anybody else actually seen, the final report. But I think it's telling that Vote Leave is so concerned about this report that they are trying to get ahead of the story and try to bury it underneath all of the coverage of the football match, rather than wait for the final report. So I think it's interesting to see what they've been doing.
Yeah. Political spin doesn't protect you from the law.
Well, I mean, it's a preemptive strike by Vote Leave before the Electoral Commission report comes out. Now, some viewers may be looking at this whole thing and thinking this is very odd sort of media war playing out.
The Electoral Commission report still has not come out, and yet they would continuously invite Vote Leave to talk about the allegations against them.
The key thing Vote Leave's Matthew Elliott says that you are lying about is that they remained in control of the money. You know, that they're not disputing that the money was transferred in a coordinated way, but they're disputing who was in control of it. You know, they're saying Believes, you know, your colleague, Darren Grimes, was in control of it.
Yeah.
What is your evidence that that's not true?
We've provided a plethora of evidence that shows that Darren Grimes didn't have control over the money. When when Vote Leave came to us and said to us, actually, we found a way of getting you money, as volunteers, we were like, okay, great. We don't understand how finances work because we were just postgraduates or still at university as volunteers. And, you know, Dominic Cummings has even talked to, there's an email of Dominic Cummings which Vote Leave said it was in the rough draft of the Electoral Commission report, where he tells a donor that they should give the money to Believe. There's plenty of evidence showing how much of how Vote Leave was so in charge of the way that the money was distributed.
I mean, Vote Leave have admitted, I think, in their interviews today that they were involved in moving that money to Believe, but their claim is that it was then in the control of Believe, according to the rules.
Yeah, but if you actually look at the three binders of evidence that we've provided to the Electoral Commission, any reasonable person looking at that, including apparently the Electoral Commission itself, would disagree, because what is clearly apparent is Believe was asking for permission, was asking for advice, was essentially a subsidiary of Vote Leave. And the reason that's important, for people to understand, is because that means that Believe was a vehicle to break the law. It was a vehicle to overspend by as much as 10%. And when you look at a referendum that was won by 2%, and you've got the main campaign overspending by upwards of 10% against the law, there's a real question about whether that's fair. And in sport, when you cheat, you get disqualified. You lose your medal, you lose your trophy. And what Vote Leave is now saying is, essentially, we want to keep the Brexit trophy, even though we cheated.
Shahmir, Sanni, why were you taking part in this? Why were you colluding in this cheat, as Chris Wylie describes it?
Well, as I've said before, I was a volunteer at Vote Leave. And I went through this entire process seeking advice from the Vote Leave lawyers, seeking advice from senior members of Vote Leave staff. I've never been involved in political campaigns, as was Darren.
Are you saying you didn't know what you were doing was wrong?
No, of course we didn't, because the advice we got from Vote Leave lawyers was that everything is fine, that this is totally legitimate. And Darren and I both were there just listening to senior people who are some of the most important people in Westminster. Two of the people implicated in this work in Downing Street. This goes to the heart of the British political system. It's pretty wild that anyone would think that two volunteers would be able to manage this entire scheme or understand the implications of it.
Shahmir, when you made your allegations on Channel 4 News and in The Observer, in the immediate period after that, all the discussion was about your past relationship with Stephen Parkinson, Theresa May's advisor. And whether you were some sort of jilted ex-lover.
A sex scandal. But I didn't just report Stephen Parkinson, I reported everyone that was involved in the scheme. My concerns were democracy and protecting, quite literally, the fundamentals of our institutions, of our democratic institutions. Yet, number 10, and much of the press instead focused on my relationship. My relationship was minuscule. It's not relevant. I'm not only reporting Stephen Parkinson. I'm reporting a multitude of people. I'm reporting Vote Leave. So if they deliberately knew that this would distract the conversation, and it did for a period of time. But now that the Electoral Commission is coming out with a report, it doesn't matter however they want to spin it. How
can you be sure that they knew what they were doing was illegal when Shahmir sits here and says he didn't know it was illegal?
There's a big difference between, a 23-year-old volunteer on their first campaign, a 21-year-old volunteer, first campaign, and somebody who is the special advisor to a cabinet minister. It's their job to know the law. It's their responsibility to follow the law.
And over that, we were taking advice from the lawyer, from all of these senior staff members, saying, is this okay? I even sent an email to the Vote Leave head of compliance, William Norton, saying, hey, is this okay? Can we do this? Like, any questions that I had was sent to them. And it was, yes, it's fine, yes, it's fine. So it's only afterwards, through my own self-reflection, through my own sort of going to people, trying to figure out why is the press going after this so much? What's wrong? There must have been something wrong. Through my own self-reflection that I realized, actually, I was being lied to, and we were being manipulated by all of these people just so that they could win, just so that they could get Brexit. But at this point, it doesn't matter Brexit doesn't matter. Because this goes to the very core of our country.
I mean, some viewers might watch this and go, well, look, OK, maybe there was something that went wrong. The Electoral Commission seemed to have found rules were broken, the law was broken. But that doesn't change the fact that 17 million people voted for Brexit.
Well, it doesn't change the fact that people voted for it. But what it does change is that the campaign was based on cheating. And that totally contradicts what this country stands for, which is democratic principles. If we stand for democracy, then our elections and campaigns should be run on a fair vote.
So what should happen now?
What is the point of having a referendum if you win by cheating?
But are you saying rerun it?
What is the alternative?
What's the alternative?
What is the alternative? If we go down, sure, you know what, as a Brexiteer, like I said, I would vote Leave again, because I don't believe in the European Union, and I will never believe in the European Union. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you vote Leave or Remain. What matters is that you protect the very fundamental institutions of this country, which is democracy, the law. And if we have gotten to a point where you can argue against the law, where you can say, actually, the law doesn't matter, then everyone in this country needs to seriously think about what's the point of fighting for democracy.
The other point Matthew Elliott is making is that in terms of fairness, Vote Leave were never invited into the Electoral Commission to be interviewed. You were, yes?
That's not... Well, what happened was we had to physically hand over the evidence. So we went to the Electoral Commission and met some of the staff and handed over the evidence, which was 3 binders this thick of evidence, no exaggeration. And so we then sat and explained what it was that we were handing them, because there was a lot of documents and a lot of paperwork. If that counts as an interview, so be it. But the actual questions that we received from the Electoral Commission were in writing, as Vote Leave received, as Be Leave received, as Darren Grimes received, in writing, and we responded in writing. And the reason they do that is so that you have the opportunity to consult a lawyer and give a measured response.
So most of the evidence is supplied on paper?
Yeah, it's how the Electoral Commission works.
That's exactly how they did in the first 2 times of the investigation. The first 2 times where Darren was getting his advice from Vote Leave staff on how to respond. And it's exactly the same way they responded.
What Vote Leave have revealed is that the Electoral Commission thinks the law has been broken. Does that automatically now involve the police, as far as you're aware?
It can. It's up to the Electoral Commission. So we have to wait for the final report, but they can refer this to the police and the Crime Prosecution Service.
But we don't know whether that's going to happen?
We don't know until the final report comes out.
All the senior people that you have named in your allegations thus far have denied your claims?
Of course they would deny it. I mean, like, you're not gonna, like, these are the type of people that out gay Muslim men and think it's okay. These are the kind of people that say, without looking at evidence, will scream liar, will shut down any allegations despite seeing the evidence. When you work in politics, you should rely on facts, you should rely on evidence, yet they have thrown that all in the bin. These sort of people don't care about ethics. They don't care about, any of these sort of pedantics. Of course they're going to deny it. Just look at the evidence. Just look at the evidence. There's more than enough evidence.
I think, unfortunately, they're going to have to come to the realization that sometimes facts matter and sometimes evidence matters. And the Electoral Commission has looked at this evidence and has found that, yes, criminal offences have been committed.
Well, we haven't seen the final report, have we? So we don't.
Well, Vote Leave says that the Electoral Commission has found them guilty of criminal offences.
If they are calling you a liar, and if you're saying that's untrue, I mean, that's libelous.
Yes.
Will you consider taking legal action?
I'll have to speak to my lawyers.
How sure of your own position are you? I mean,
Look, you don't go through the things that I have done or that I have gone through if you're not sure, right? I've sort of staked a lot in order to protect, I know it sounds cheesy, but to protect British democracy. And so why would I do that if I didn't believe in what I'm saying? Or if I wasn't supported by so much evidence? Evidence, evidence. That's what matters in this day and age of fake news.